there is a critical distinction between Sri Aurobindo's approach to spirituality and past approaches to the spirit. And the essence of that distinction is the place of the physical body and matter in spirituality. We discussed the other day how so far spirituality saw the body as a support for the spirit, itself at best capable of receiving a reflection, a glow of the higher consciousness, but being made of substance of inconscience, being inextricably bound in ignorance, therefore in suffering, the body itself cannot do more. Sri Aurobindo questions this conclusion. He says, just because this is all that the evolution has been able to do with the body so far, does not mean that this is all that it can do. Of how evolution has gone already through two great miracles. Out of so-called dead matter, it was able to create living matter, which is the very opposite of dead matter, and itself a great miracle. Just because we are used to seeing now living matter in nature, we say, oh yes, that's normal. But before it was first experienced, if you had told somebody that one day this rock will be able to move by itself, it will be able to feel, it will be able to respond to things, you would say, are you crazy? I can study the molecular structure of the rock and tell you these molecules are rigid. They cannot act the way you say. In fact, what we see in the blooming of a flower is nothing but rock, which has been transformed. And what would be the nature of that miracle? What would be the nature of that? And remember the principle, the very opposite of what is today. So self-aware, conscious, living rock must become now. What's the next great leap, which is impossible to the self-aware consciousness? Superconscious, omniscience, omnipotence, oneness, the very opposite of something which is divided, something which is ignorant. And that is the nature of the spirit. Are there many more gradations or one final leap? Every great leap has intermediate steps also. But there's a point where it stabilizes. Intermediate steps are never stable. So the leap where it stabilizes is that supramental consciousness, consciousness of oneness, omniscience, omnipotence. And if you look at the logic of evolution, this is inevitable. But if you try to conceive of what that will be like, we could project from here, from what we know, from what we glimpse, from what we experience in our ideals. But to know it in itself, if we already had that, we would have done it. So there's something in a kind of an inability for this consciousness to be able to make the leap, and therefore, as in all previous leaps, the help from above. And the timing which is now, when nature is preparing and pushing forward, and the help from above has reached down, and there is a nexus which is formed. And the transformation, the breakthrough into this physical expression of a supramental consciousness is inevitable. In evolutionary time, the mother asked Sri Aurobindo, how long will it take after the supramental descent for the appearance of a supramental species? Sri Aurobindo said minimum 300 years. Now the 300 is not a hard number, it's an indication of the time span. And there is always the possibility of intervention of the grace, which can speed it up. And at least in an individual, it could be done much sooner, perhaps, if not in the collective. That was the whole point of creating that space, which we know as Sri Aurbindo Ashram, where this whole effort could be concentrated, intensified, and the purity maintained in which the supramental consciousness could be directly received in a physical consciousness. Now, this link with the physical consciousness and the body, as I said, is the key distinction, which Sri Aurobindo says it's not enough to be able to rise into that consciousness and then you come back and you are what you were, maybe with an afterglow of something higher. That consciousness must now seize upon this body consciousness and transform it into its terms as life transformed rock into its terms, as mind transformed living tissue into its terms, and that's what makes for our body. And this body, therefore, will undergo a further transformation. Transformation is not change. There's a very, very big difference. Transformation is closer to alchemy, where iron becomes gold. That's transformation. But change is when you take chemicals, combine them, and iron becomes iron oxide, it becomes metal mixed with some others, expressing new properties, surely, but iron inside that mix still remains iron. It has not become gold, which is fundamentally different in substantiality and quality of its identity. So the human body can be trained. It can be made supple, it can be made more capable, it can be taught to live with less food, it can be taught to jump higher, to run faster. And the fact that in the Olympic Games we are always pushing the limits of what the body is capable of shows you there's potentially no limit to how much you could train the body to grow in its capacities. But that's not transformation. Transformation is when the very substance of the body tissue undergoes such a radical change that you will not call it body tissue anymore, and yet it will be material substance. And the tissue itself will express that quality which belongs to the next step of consciousness. It's not that I am awakened in a supramental consciousness and then my body substance is the vehicle through which it expresses. The body substance will share in the awakening of the supramental consciousness. Just as our body substance experiences the mind's influence and can behave in a mental way. So the linkage with the physical consciousness and the transformation of the body substance is central to the idea of a supramental consciousness manifesting and a new life based on a new consciousness being realized on earth. Of course, before that step takes place, and even if its completion may take many thousands of years, there will be many intermediate steps, each of which may involve some degree of partial transformation. And that's why we have to understand the word transformation in its full sense. You can have a transformation by the supramental consciousness, but you can also have transformation by all the levels in between, which we have discussed before. So you could have the higher mind now seizing on the physical consciousness and already beginning to awaken in it something which was not there before. You could have the illumined mind filling it. You could have the intuitive mind filling it and the overmental consciousness. Each transforming a step, a degree more and a degree more. But the perfection of that transformation, its complete divinization, where it's completely free of ignorance, would be when the supramental finally completes that transformation. That may take whatever number of centuries. But the stages before can begin right now. And the very first step of that transformation will be your mind taking up the substance of your body consciousness and awakening in it its own higher mental capacities. Because right now, though this material has been transformed by mind, it is only the lower grades of the mental operation which are embedded in it. So for example, you are able to learn to ride the bicycle. And in riding the bicycle, your body does a pretty complex calculation. We had a lecture in our school once by the senior students The bicyclist and unconscious physicist. That was the title they gave. And they describe all the physics involved in maintaining the balance when you ride a bicycle. Well, the body does not think in those terms, but it senses, it feels, and internally at a subconscious level, it calculates and keeps that balance. And all that is taking place at a subconscious level. But you could teach the body to become more conscious, at which point you would not have to train it mechanically. Okay, keep doing this until the balance is got. You could imprint on the body a certain need. I need to be able to do this. And the body takes it up and is able to do it. And this is possible as we are today, without even a spiritual training. If there is a spiritual foundation in the training, it can open to much more. It can even open to an intuitive influence. This is the example from our ashram of many people in whom that had happened. Kapali Shastriya was one of the very early disciples of Sri Aurbindo, perhaps the only one who had attained to self-realization before he came to Sri Aurbindo. And he was given the work in one of the departments, in the construction department, where he had to handle the paints, which had to be mixed in exact proportions to get precise colors. And it is narrated how his body had become so intuitive that he could pick up, scoop out the paint, and it would be the exact amount to the gram. And he just had to pour it. There were other symptoms also in his physical consciousness, which were in that direction. There was another disciple who came in 1940, I think, who later became the head of the physical education department, Pranabda. And there's a whole story of how he came, and Sri Aurbindo had told the mother that a person will come who will be an instrument of Kali, and his coming will mark the transition of the yoga in the physical consciousness. That is in the ashram itself. And his coming began the whole physical education department and things like that. Mother worked on him extensively. And at one point, he narrated how Mother said to him, "This evening you will play tennis with me." This is a man who had just done bodybuilding, worked on his body consciousness, but through bodybuilding. And Pranabda said, "But I don't know how to play tennis." Mother said, "Don't worry, I will give you the capacity to play." So he said, "I don't know what that means." He goes back to his office and pulls out a tennis book and starts reading the tennis rules. This is a picture of a forehand stroke, backhand stroke. This is what you do, this is what you don't do. Okay. And he goes in the evening, picks up the racket for the first time in his life and begins to play. And he plays like a professional. And everybody said to him, "We can't believe that you've never played before. You must have played, you must have trained." He said, "No, I've never done it." And he said it was Mother who imprinted in his body the whole capacity to play. Now you see what that means. When a professional plays tennis, he moves the stroke. He is not thinking, have I got the correct angle? Am I hitting with the right force? What's the rebound position? In his consciousness, he sees the ball coming. He wants it to go there. The hand moves and does it. That whole domain of the calculation and movement, which is almost automatic and spontaneous, has been imprinted by the extensive training. But what is imprinted is the instinct of the consciousness in the body, in how it should respond to the mind's intention of putting the ball there, right? If that whole instinct of the consciousness, which is consciousness, can be directly taken and imprinted on another person, and the other person is capable of receiving that imprint, well, he would catch that instinct. And without effort, he would be able to intend it and the hand would move just as needed, right? What is required is for the person to have the capacity to receive that imprint. And then for him either to absorb the imprint from another or for someone else to be able to transfer it into him. Now this is not such a difficult thing. if one has worked to develop the body consciousness, and especially if one has to intuitivize it. If that much is done, you can even invoke, because there's an intuitivized influence that can act on the body, you can invoke and pray to the divine and say, I need to do this, give me this capacity, and it can get imprinted. A download. You see this idea presented in a dramatic way in a movie called The Matrix, yes, in The Matrix. So this guy needs to fly a helicopter. He tells somebody, I don't know how to fly a helicopter, download the programming for the helicopter, and they do it, and he has the full skill. That possibility actually exists in us. Once you understand how it works, it's not such a big deal. It is towards this end that Mother organized the physical training program in the ashram, to make the body consciousness awakened, ready and fit to receive a higher consciousness. This message she gave, the objective, I don't get the exact words, but something like this. The body must be taught to become, and then she gives a list, strong, supple, harmonious, etc. And then she says, so that when the time comes, it is capable of expressing a divine perfection. That was the idea. The base of that preparation, and then it's left to you what you do with it. Interestingly, one can see even today, and I observe this quite obviously, when children who have been through that kind of training are walking next to children who have not been through that kind of training, you can see in the movement of the body that the body consciousness here is awake and there it is not. Occasionally I find people in conventional schools where the consciousness is awake, and I inevitably ask, and I get the response, yes, they have been through dance training. It's training for classical dance of any kind, Indian, Western, whatever form it takes. The classical forms of training are so rigorous, so complete. They make the body, compel it to become more conscious. If this is possible with an intuitivized consciousness, the body can be even spontaneously capable of doing things. It can spontaneously also turn upon itself in the intuitive consciousness and feel itself and know it's working. So you've just eaten food which disagrees with you by past habit of association in the physical consciousness. So somebody has a problem, when I eat this food, I get stomachache. Why? Okay, you could go through psychotherapy, find some association in the past. The exact cause is not important. The body has a habit of responding to this food by this reaction. It's a habit in the body consciousness. So when you are eating, the intuitivized consciousness in the body will actually feel, this I associate with this feeling. And at that point, the mind will say, I want to overcome it, and put a will. And the body can mold its response to that will and overcome it. Or I've eaten it, now it's giving me a discomfort, I can will the body, digest it, don't give in. And it does it. I feel an illness entering, it's getting slightly feverish, I might catch a cold, and I will it, and the body pushes out the fever, corrects for whatever imbalance. I'm feeling too chilly, I can will the body to increase its temperature, and so on. These things are attained even with conventional practices of Hatha Yoga. So what I'm pointing to is, even if you have not made a spiritual effort, just the act of making the body conscious can lead to so much. And potentially, you could even modify certain normal balances and responses of the body consciousness by willing it thus. An extreme example is Swami Rama. Having mastered the Hatha Yogic processes, he had such an extraordinary control on the life energy and the body consciousness that under laboratory test conditions he could slow down his heartbeat and almost as if seem to stop, slow down his breathing and still be completely functional, fully conscious. And then at some point they were experimenting on the hand to get him to raise the body temperature, make it warmer or cooler by will, which was working out fine. And then suddenly something kicked in He felt he was just within grasp of something which he had never done before. He had never even thought possible. He asked the scientists to put 2 electrodes on the same palm. And on one corner of the palm, he increased the temperature by 6 degrees centigrade. And on the other point, he decreased the temperature by 2 or 3 degrees at the same time. While he was doing the first experiment, he sensed the ability to be able to do this thing which he had never done. It's an intuitive feel again in the body consciousness. Yes, I can do it. And urgently he asked them to put the electrodes and did it. Perhaps he might not have got it a second time. Perhaps the same concentration was needed. Point being, all of this is possible once the body consciousness becomes awakened and responsive to your mind's will, and if possible even to an intuitive consciousness from where something much greater can come. We know of cases, people who had never gone through any training, being able to then take up skilled activities and being able to do it spontaneously, from driving a car to playing musical instruments and so on, because of this capacity. Now consider what more can happen if this process continues. There can come a point where even the whole digestive process can come fully under your conscious control. Various current balance of chemical and biological processes could be modified. Body could be taught even to generate intense heat in a sustained way, now drawing not only physical resources, but on life energy resources, mind resources, intuition resources. Such is the training which is also taught in some of the monasteries in the Himalayas, where they teach you to make the body capable of heating itself in the snow to extraordinary extents that you can live bare-bodied with nominal food that you take, live bare-bodied, sleep in the snow and function completely normally. And it can be learned. But when a divine consciousness now begins to enter, the body becomes not only self-aware, but now begins to be aware of the divine presence. And the divine presence, it begins to feel around it, within it, and then it begins to respond to the divine will, the divine intention. And what would that be like? And Sri Aurbindo describes how the current biological framework itself is inherently limiting to any inhabiting consciousness. When the mind enters the body, it gets dulled. When the mind frees itself from the body, it's like a huge relief, a natural, free, wide working. But you come back into the body and it gets dulled. But if this body functioning can be made subtler, suppler, lighter, freer, less dense in its consciousness, then the mind could enter it and not be thus reduced. And Sri Aurobindo describes degrees, steps by which this can be done, to the extent that you will never experience even mind fatigue or fatigue of energy. You could continue to work normally, doing all activities at full peak, and even to push the peak to, he says, performance which is double of your current, triple, quadruple, decuple. That means 10 times more. Quoting exactly the words he uses. Decuple, 10 times more the performance of your current capacity, just by working on this shift in the balance of mind and body. Of course, done from a higher spiritual influence, it can be done more easily. And he is not saying just that it can be done, he did it on himself. The evidence for that is in his personal diary notes, which in his physical lifetime were never made public. In fact, they became public only in the 1980s, late 80s. And as far as we know, even the mother had not seen them. She perhaps knew of their existence, but she never seen them. They were never brought before her. He describes, for example, how he's able to walk barefoot on the hot ground, stone, in the middle of summer at midday, and not be affected by the heat. Even the response of the body to the heat is modified to such a degree he can handle anything. In one of the letters he says that if the body has reached a stage where he could drink poison, and the body could take it all the way through without it harming at all. So there are certain extraordinary things which she had been able to attain to, including as an outcome of this whole direction of development, especially making the body free of denseness and heaviness and inertia, even a shift in the weight of the body and the body's relationship with gravity. And there are experiments he discusses in his diary notes where he's able to keep his arm up 6, 7, 8 hours at a time without any tiredness. Keeping one leg up 8 hours at a time, no tiredness. Being able to work thereafter, of course, would be without tiredness for as long as he wants. I had a very interesting occasion to interview the son of the maidservant who was working in his room. And the son of this maidservant said, "Oh, my mother." He later became the driver for the mother. His name was Bala. So he said, "Oh, my mother, she was always afraid of Sri Aurbindo." Now this is, remember, at a time when before the ashram was started, there was a maidservant who would come and sweep his room. And she told the son, "Oh, that man, he's a magician, I'm very scared of him." And he asked why. She said, "Sometimes I'm sweeping the room and I see him sitting on the chair with one arm up, one leg up, like that for hours together. He's doing some crazy stuff. And then sometimes I look up and he's gone. And I don't know where he's gone. I didn't hear him go. And then I look down and I look again and he's back on his chair. It's like he's become invisible again." Okay, it's just to say that there were people who actually saw some of this. But at a physical level, it's possible to overcome the limitations of the body which make for the ignorance as a compulsion. And a little step more, when the divine consciousness of unity, omniscience, omnipotence, now completes this process and the substance itself becomes of the nature of divine substance and yet physical substance. What would that be like? And it's interesting to see how the human speculation, the ideal of the mind's ideals, is actually catching glimpses of such things and trying to articulate them in some of the first science fiction and then in cinema now, where we are able to express these things. You look at this movie called Avatar. It was such a great hit. The story itself was okay. Fight, struggle between commercial interests. But the way the movie was presented and the images, the values, the culture and the relationship with nature all had deep spiritual truths which were shown. That's what made the movie so special. It resonated with our deepest aspirations and ideals, and people who watched the movie didn't want it to end. They wanted to go into that world, because that is the subtle physical world. Is the world so close to the physical that it has the density of the physical matter, but is subtle enough that with these eyes we cannot see. But when our consciousness shifts into the subtle physical and we are in the subtle physical domain, we cannot distinguish it from the physical. It is as dense, except that all the forms there are capable of expressing perfection. In this gross physical domain, perfection is almost impossible. Somehow things always seem to fall short, but there you can actually experience perfection. There are passages in Savitri where Sri Aurbindo describes the domain of the subtle physical. And that, he says, is the true physical, because what's possible there is possible in the gross physical. It's that link which needs to be completed. And so you see in that movie, the plants not only seem to behave intelligently, they give off a light. They're translucent almost. They have an inherent light. This is the nature of things in the subtle physical also, especially in the higher ranges of the subtle physical. Matter is self-revealing. It does not conceal. In our domain, gross matter conceals, it covers up. You do not know what I'm thinking and feeling because the material form is rigid. It binds, limits. But if the material form was an expression of the spirit, of my thoughts, of my feelings, of my soul, of my divinity, then as I think and feel something beautiful, the form would reveal that beautiful thought and feeling. You see how the form itself would have to become plastic, but also translucent to the consciousness that inhabits it. And here you begin to get a glimpse of what this transformed body will be like. And something of this is captured in some of these visualizations, but it is still densely material. It belongs to the domain of matter. It's made of that substance, but now, having gone through one step in the miracle of evolution, one more transformation which involves a divinization. Now this involves many levels, even in the physical consciousness. There is the general organic consciousness, the examples I gave earlier, that you could push the functioning of those organs, modify their relationships, digest practically anything that you could eat, because now the stomach and its digestive power is more resilient, more capable, 10 times more perhaps. Extract the maximum nourishment out of a little bit of food. And so you need very little to get all that you require. All that is fine. But the organs themselves still need the food and all that. So Sri Aurbindo discusses another step possible in this way. Even the organs are replaced by the direct functioning of the energy that currently operates through the organ. And it describes a transition where the centers, the chakras, begin to take a more and more overt role, and the physical organs themselves atrophy because they are no more needed or they become secondary. And the energy acts directly to do what the organ would do indirectly. And this would be a kind of a passage to that kind of a complete divinization, still involving physical substance. So I was describing at an organic level, there is a consciousness of the organs working, but deeper down, all organs are made of cells. Specialized cells and then pluripotent cells, but you go down to the cellular level and you find the functioning there has certain inherent limitations. And one of those limitations is the tendency for the cells to age and to die. And the body stays alive and young by regenerating, replacing those cells which are aging and dying. So when a cell ages, becomes less functional or begins to break down, the body isolates it, replaces it by a new cell which is born. So effectively, we are constantly renewing, we are constantly dying and being born again at a cellular level, and as long as the overall arrangement remains the same, we are young. And this is happening in a newborn baby's body. The difference between the newborn baby who's growing and somebody who's aging is this pace of the replacement process. While earlier the replacement of the old damaged cells was happening rapidly, later the replacement process is slower and the breakdown process is faster. And eventually the breakdown overwhelms the replacement process. The second thing is the replacement process itself does not replace with cells which are as young. They are already somehow limited and damaged. And at that point, we wonder why should that be? Because, let us say your mother gave birth to you, let's take a later age, at the age of 40. The child born from a mother who's 40 still has cells which are as young can be. Completely fresh. And where does that come from? From her body. It's part of her body, right? So if her body can create this lump of mass which is completely young, why cannot it regenerate itself? Logically, there's no reason why it cannot. It's just that's how the body functions. It does this and it does not do that. Why? Habit. Past evolutionary habit. There's no other reason. And so a point comes where, as we begin to work upon the body consciousness and we reach the cellular domain, we realize there's a whole bundle of habits there which prevent the full expression of the body's youth. There was a comment yesterday, but I wouldn't want my body to continue forever. That's not the point. The point is I should not be compelled to have a body that degenerates. You may still choose to change the body, that's fine. But your body should be constantly an expression of your true consciousness. And I meet people who are 18, 19, they're hard, they're so young. And if you didn't look at the body, you couldn't guess. And actually the body reflects that youth. Somebody who's 80 looks like 60 because inside they are 20 or 30. And it reflects in the body somehow. So we want the body to be able to express what we actually feel ourselves to be, what we are, in fact. And then I want to change it. That's a different story. You're free to change it when you have that capacity. But that means at a cellular level, you have to change this process of degeneration. And so Mother worked on this part of the consciousness also, went deep into it. And in the depth of the cellular consciousness, she found that the cells had no real reason to age or to die. The only reason was habit from the past. A habit from the past is not just my biological past, not my mother's biological past, not just my ancestors, but going back all the way to the earliest attempts of life force to form organized structures. Now look at it this way. Your body's cells trace back to your mother's body, right? Continuously. All the cells I have today, although they have been renewed many times over, had as their origin cells, which had as their origin cells, which had as their origin eventually cells of my mother's body, who had as her origin cells of her mother's body. It all goes down the maternal line, pretty much mostly. And all the way back to where? It does not end. It goes all the way back through all the ape species from which our body may have evolved, back through other species and plant species and the very first cells. There's continuity all the way, remember. And the memory of that early attempt of this life force to form cellular structures and bodies and being pushed back and failing, and then giving up in helplessness. That memory remains all the way through, even today, at the cellular level. This is what the mother found. I don't go too much into the details of her explorations. I'm getting to the essence, the conclusions of it. And then she said, can we change that? Because after all, any habit can be changed. At a macro level, we can change the habit of our thoughts, we can change the habit of our emotions, habits of our organic functions. And so in principles, all the way down to the cells, we could change the habit. The problem is when you change the habit in your thoughts, the part which is self-aware in your thoughts is easy to reprogram, easy to change. The part which is instinctive, not aware, is harder to change, right? So when I get upset, I'm not conscious that I'm getting upset until it's too late. So it's harder to catch the moment. But if I could catch the moment when I'm beginning to feel angry, I could stop it there and change it. When my stomach gets queasy and I know I might not just digest the food I've eaten, I'm not able to be consciously able to feel the stomach, and so I'm not able to will it to do differently. I have to make it conscious in order to be able to will into it. So the key to changing a habit is to awaken the consciousness in that part and then imprint a new intent. And then repeat that intent again and again until a new habit is established. What's the difference between conscious effort and habitual? What does the repetition do? It pushes from the domain of conscious down to a level which is subconscious. So when you pick up a glass of water and have a perfect balance of it as you bring it to your mouth while talking, without even looking at it, you are able to do it, but the newborn child is unable to do it. He has to lift with full awareness, hold it with both hands, keep the balance, bring it to his mouth, and if at that point you distract him, a little will spill on the side. Between that period where he's learning and our adult period where I can do it without looking, was a series of repetitions where the conscious effort eventually settled at levels which are subconscious to me now, where they continued automatically, right? So this is how normally things we do tend to settle eventually all the way down even into cellular consciousness. But if you want to change it rapidly, you can't keep repeating 1,000 times and hope that it happens eventually at the cellular level, because you've had billions of years of cellular habit which you're trying to undo in a short time of a few years. That's why it's so much more difficult at a cellular level than at an organic level. Unless you can enter the cellular consciousness and awaken it, and then you can consciously will it directly. And then imprint that will and get the cells to behave differently thereafter, permanently. The question is, are you able to get in there? And then are you able to bring in an influence strong enough to overcome the current habit? Because it's not enough. When my hand is shaking, I'm trying to will it to stop shaking and I cannot. The will is not strong enough. The habit, the resistance there is stronger. So it needs a consciousness which is powerful enough. And the higher you go, the more powerful, because closer to the origin of things. And this was the point Sri Aurbindo makes. In order to overcome the inherent inertia and inconscience and ignorance in the body, one has to go all the way to the supramental consciousness, which alone can overcome that entirely. Anything in between can make changes, but not make a fundamental transformation. But they prepared the way for that. In fact, the most critical of these, which prepares the way, is the influence of the psychic presence within us as it suffuses the mind, life, and body. Prepares the substance now because it awakens in the substance an aspiration to the divine, a familiarity with the touch of the divine, and allows them the divine action to act more and more directly. So from below an opening upwards through the psychic influence, from above a descending higher consciousness, and the two meeting working on it can make that change. And the mother did this in her cells. Not only she discovered the secret of their tendency to age and die, she worked to infuse the supramental consciousness in the cells and to awaken in the cells a new habit. And the habit to turn to the divine and to obey the divine will rather than the habit or the will of the inconscience. And she said, there's a whole description of the stages she went through, the struggles she went through. But she said finally she was able to get into a point where there were large clusters of cells which were now beginning to aspire to the divine consciousness and aspiring for the divine life. And even that some of them had accepted to not age and die. It's interesting, she's describing the cellular consciousness and she says, it's not like an individualized consciousness, it's more like a group consciousness, a cluster at a time. And of course there are parts in the body which are more awake, some which are less, and so on. In the way we look at the organization of the body in Ayurveda, they speak of 7 gradations of substance in the body, from the densest, grossest, least aware to the subtlest and most aware. And the densest are the teeth and the bones. Of course, you do not feel them if you touch them, because they do not have sensation of or consciousness. But they are also the hardest and the longest to change. She speaks of how there is a sacred perfume, and in the mother's presence, people felt this perfume, smelled this perfume. And she's asking if it is coming from the cells. So first I want to give a background to this perfume. Remember when speaking of the flowers, I said the perfume is the subtlest part. And because it's the subtlest part, not only it emerges from the flower, but it grows beyond the physical boundaries of the flower. Where the flower could not move to be, the perfume spreads to be, potentially extending everywhere. That's the physical representation of the aura, the consciousness in its most subtle part from our being, which spreads and extends far beyond the physical limits. And the aura itself, our subtle bodies, which extend around this much or more, has a substance. When that is pure and sufficiently densified or connects to the most dense part of our physical body, its vibrational quality is felt and sensed even in the physical space around you. And it is something of this which registers to our power of smell. The quality of the aura is the quality of the perfume around the person. Now, modern physics, modern biology is coming very close to measuring this when they find that around us, in an extension about 0.5 meter, there is a cluster of a unique pattern of bacteria, which is distinct for each person and hanging around you in the air. They don't quite explain how it stays stuck around you, and it's so distinctive, it's like a fingerprint. You can know who it is from that. And we would understand this by recognizing that it is the densification of the vibrations of the subtle physical which are the basis for the formation of these bacteria also. So in a way, the pattern of those formations is a reflection of the quality of consciousness that fills your aura. And the mother observes also how certain thoughts and certain emotions create a certain ripple of vibration which is registered as an obnoxious smell to a very subtle part of our smell. Even in the smells there are subtler smells and grosser smells. It is in the subtlest smells. If the person has thoughts which are not so nice, you smell it as something not so nice. When the consciousness is so full of beauty and joy and love and harmony of the divine, it smells also with a joy, love and harmony of the divine. And when one becomes more sensitive in the higher gradations of smell, it's obvious. You can know what the person is like, or at least their current thoughts and feelings. But that can further densify until it is actually felt by anybody, smelled by anybody. So where is this coming from? Not the physical cells alone, but the subtler substance of the aura and its denser layers approaching the physical. The physical biological cells may also participate in this particular process, but they are not the first origin for this aura. So for example, when you smell the perfume of a person, the person may still not have entered the room, but when the vibes of the person have hit you, you smell it already. And so it's not a purely physical smell that's happening. But the part which is the most dense physical source of the smell may also take support of the cells of the body. Uddhava describes how after Sri Aurbindo left his body, there was such a beautiful perfume in the room, and which was coming from the body itself. What causes damage to the aura is anything which is inherently disharmonious expressed in the aura. Considering that the bulk of the aura is made of your thoughts and emotional vibrations, any thoughts and feelings which are not harmonious, which are conflicting, which are sharp-edged, which break rather than unite, those are the things which actually have the effect of tearing, weakening first and then tearing, and then by habit leaving a permanent hole or a gap in the aura, which can be sensed or seen, and which is the origin of many diseases which then come through that. So two things. One is about the will, the source and essence of the will. What is will finally? It is an ability it's a power of consciousness to assert its freedom on itself or on things which it feels outside itself. This power goes back all the way to the power of pure consciousness in the origin to freely manifest itself, express itself. Chit Shakti, conscious energy, conscious power. All experience of free will in us, however partial, however mixed, is essentially a reflection of that. That's why the more we become conscious and aware and free in consciousness, the more clear and formed and free the action of the will. Okay. But the problem is, in an individualized consciousness, our will can experience a sense of separateness from the divine will. We can assert our will in a direction contrary to the divine will, which of course leads inevitably to more complications. But when we consciously align ourselves to the divine consciousness, our personal will aligns to the divine will, and there is the spontaneity of the action and the harmony of the action. But the power of will is always a shared power, a reflected power of the original divine will, but it can be distorted. The second question is about the different layers of and their influence and transformation. Recall what I said earlier. You can have an influence to change or to transform on any of these levels. So one could begin with nothing of the spiritual, purely by a mental effort to train and overcome. That's what most gymnasts and athletes are doing. But if you now tap into the spiritual consciousness, you can do so much more. There's a very interesting incident when in the 50s, there was this exchange program between India and Russia, and some of the Russian gymnasts who were then the best in the world had come to India on some tour, friendship tour. They came to the ashram also and demonstrated some of their skills. And the mother watched all that. And then afterwards she commented, if only they had a little bit of spirituality, they would have been like the gods. So in the physical consciousness, such an extraordinary perfection had been attained. If there was a little bit of the link to the spirit from the body consciousness, it would have been in the character of perfection which is natural to the gods. So it's possible to go very far without anything of the spirit. But two things the spirit will do. It will bring into the body consciousness something which is not currently expressed. A glow, a beauty which is ethereal, which is spiritual. And when you see that in somebody, you know this is not just physical training, something special there. And it is very difficult to define it. If you have to define what is beauty, it's so difficult. And especially the beauty which is a reflection of the divine beauty, it has a character which you have no words for it, but it is so captivating, so deeply moving and satisfying. It's the only thing which really satisfies. And so a little bit of effort to bring that, combined with the base of the physical possibilities from other levels, would take us so far. But if the primary means of action is the spiritual, we could go so much more. We have photographs of some of the early children in the ashram school when they were being suffused by the mother's presence. They were not conscious, they were just playing around. And you see this glow of a certain beauty and a joy. And it was effortless for them. I don't find that so much in today's children. It's there, but not so strong. But you don't find that at all in a place where children are doing exercises, but without a spiritual atmosphere. Absolutely. This is a very useful thing to do. You can undo the damage of stress by these practices of meditation, pranayama and asanas. But I would ask the question also, what is stress and where did that come from?
Oh, yes.
And then one would have to face the origin of the problem, which is living a life or an action which is not aligned to spirit. That is stress. When you're doing something which is contrary to a deeper truth, there's a conflict, a tension, a contradiction. And the contradiction with reality, with truth, always leads to breakdown of that which is not true. The action itself begins to break down. And that's really the stress and the side effect of stress. And one would ideally want to change the whole basis of how we approach the life and the action. So that the effect, it should not be that we do something which is damaging and then try to undo the damage and then again do the damage. It misses the point. So we need to review the core of the problem also. So it's a very important question. Can what mother achieved in herself be transferred to others? Remember the goal of the avatar, what we discussed yesterday, was to connect the consciousness with the whole of humanity, and everything which is done in himself must be then imprinted in humanity as a whole. And so all that mother did on her cellular consciousness was in a state of consciousness which was linked to the whole of humanity. And the results of her work on her body and on her cells is currently available to all humanity. But there must be an effort from the human side to prepare the receptive condition and then to aspire to receive it. This was the point I made when I discussed Pranavda's thing. The body consciousness must be made ready to receive, capable of receiving, and then it must want. It must aspire for and call that. Yes, in that case, you will receive the benefit of it. The benefit means now, as we discussed earlier, the imprint of the habit comes on you, but still it may have to overcome the old habit. And so there will be a work, there will be a period of transition. It may not happen instantaneously unless your readiness is so complete. But potentially, yes, that's the whole point of her work. Mother even commented that if Sri Aurbindo and the mother had to just do the work for their own individual body, it would have been done long ago. It was because they had to connect to the collective consciousness of humanity that it became so difficult and laborious. Because they had to pull humanity and work against the inherent resistance in humanity. But if they had not done that, if they just did it for an individual transformation, it would not be useful. The point would be missed. You see, in the Vedic vision and experience, there was a certain push, a certain degree of realization and a priority in the current evolutionary possibility then. It set the type of the whole age to follow all the way to today. But it also anticipated possibilities beyond, which it may not have consciously worked upon because it was too premature. And I see that in some of the Vedic descriptions, in some of the verses, even in the Isha Upanishad, there is a verse which suggests in that direction. I don't know if I should. I think it was an American botanist who convinced a rose bush not to grow thorns by speaking to it, communicating with it, and saying, "Look, I'm here to protect you. You don't need the thorns to protect yourself." And eventually, the bush stopped growing thorns. And the plant responds. If you can relate to it at its level and give it the conviction and consciousness, not the words, it's the connection, the identification, and then willing into it that message. No, this was actually done by an American botanist here. Leonardo would know the name of that.
And the action of the cells.
Mm-hmm. And the other example she's referring to is about the thumb. Once thumb which had been cut, was replaced by the toe thumb, and afterwards it changed its shape to become like the earlier hand's thumb. And this shows that the body is capable of reshaping itself according to some earlier memory of what its shape should be. And that memory is held in the subtle physical body. And that's why with Kirlian photography, you can take the photo of a leaf, you see the subtle body of the leaf, then you cut. You remember we read yesterday the passage where the face of the sun, the lid is removed, and then you see the oneness everywhere. And the verse immediately after goes something like this. The life breath is immortal, but of this body, ashes are the end. Remember, O will, remember what was done. Remember, O will, remember what was done. It repeats that twice. It's a very profound verse. It's juxtaposing two things. Here, the life breath is eternal, but the body, the ashes are the end. It's showing you a contradiction. Now you could interpret it to say, oh yeah, therefore forget the body. But that's not what it's saying. It's showing you, oh, something is lacking here. Something needs to be harmonized. If the life breath is eternal, why is the body ending in ashes? And the suggestion is, this must be completed. And twice it repeats, remember, O will, remember what was done. Om Krato Smara, Kritam Smara, Krato Smara, Kritam Smara. And that means there are two levels of remembrance. You have to go back two levels. One is remember who you are and why you were and what you did. And then once more you go back and remember. So two levels, from recovering the psychic source and then the self behind. And you see this contradiction. And there's something to be done, some work to be done. So to me it's obvious that they saw this, but they had to stop with what had to be done then and what the world was ready for. Cut the leaf and take a picture, and the subtle body is intact, so the physical body is damaged. And you can photograph that. And it shows that subtle body holds the template of the gross body, and the subtle body is modified by your thoughts and emotions. You can will in your subtle body a change in the shape, and the physical body will follow eventually. And Sri Aurbindo actually worked on it and did that. He changed his body shape. Narada had another story. In his garden, he has a peach tree, but it needs a fertilizing tree. And this is a female, and it does not get fertilized, so it never gives fruits. And so one day he came and said to the tree, if you don't give me fruits, I'm going to cut you down. And he said that year it flowered and it gave all the fruits, the most delicious, full, rich bloom of fruits, and then never again. Once it was okay, but it continues. So there's a whole line of experimentation that is replacing damaged organs by mechanical devices which function the same way. And it's interesting, it's useful, But the real technology will be when we can tap into the existing tissue of the body and regenerate the organs. And either consciously or even by technological stimulation, to change the pattern of habit or to utilize the habit now in a different context. That's what we're doing with nature when we use technology to. We take a tendency of nature and then modify the context of the tendency, but use that tendency as nature's habit to produce a different result. And this is what some of this technology of regenerating the organs is going to do. One of the things we're able to do is take an organ and grow it on another creature. On a rat, they've grown a human ear. If you could do it on a rat, well, why can't you do it on the human being also? But that's the interesting part. There are experiments where you take a line of cells out of the body, grow it in the petri dish, it seems to go on forever. They don't die. You put it back in the body and they start aging and dying. So there's something in the group consciousness of the body which has this habit, and we're heading to the point where we're facing this reality. And means will be found to overcome and change this. How Mother imprinted the supramental on the cells? First by going up into the supramental consciousness and then bringing it down and then infusing it. Now, it's that simple as a process. But you can do this with your mind. So you become intensely aware of an intention, let's say your hand, to make your hand conscious, to make your hand aspire for the divine. You become intensely aware, intensify the awareness, awaken in that awareness that quality which you want. And then as you feel that awareness, you push that awareness onto the hand and infuse into it that awareness. Or more directly, feel your hand, because now you already have access to the hand awareness. And as you feel the hand, intensify the awareness in the hand. And then in that intensified awareness, awaken that aspiration. And you feel in your hand something turning up like this, aspiring, to whatever extent you're willing to awaken. And when you stop, it stays, and perhaps fades out by habit after a while. When you do exercises, if you do asanas, do it with this intention. So people they start with an intention. I'm going to go to yoga classes, they do asanas, to get the yoga butt, to improve my looks, to get stronger, to get more supple, whatever the intention. That intention is the presiding influence on the body when you're doing that exercise, even when you're not conscious. But if you reverse that and said, I'm going to do that to awaken in the body an aspiration for the divine. Just that intention with which you go has an influence, although gradual, indirect. But now you can bring that influence directly as you stretch the body and you feel the stretch, the tissue, muscle, nerve, even perhaps bone. You feel in that awareness and then intensify that awareness and then turn it up. And in the body tissue awareness, you're awakening something higher, an aspiration. And when done in this way, it is in fact an influence of the psychic aspiration which is being infused indirectly. But if you then are becoming conscious of the psychic presence within you, and then feel its aspiration, and then infuse that vibration into the hands, that would be the influence of the psychic being brought into the hands, the process that Aurbindo calls psychicization, which awakens not only the aspiration in the hands, but also brings into it a spontaneous familiarity with the divine consciousness, which is natural to the psychic. So the first way was the mind consciousness entering and awakening. The second way is the psychic consciousness, which you must already have a feel of, bring into, and it is much more profound in its effect. And in this way, part by part, the whole body can be brought into the ambit of the psychic influence and made or awakened in the body the aspiration for the divine. And it would be the beginning of a very important process which would follow. If you do the practice with a higher intention, you can do the same gymnastics to train the body to become an instrument to express the divine perfection and beauty. Just that intention to begin with already begins to bring in something different. And if it's in the whole training, it is done with that conscious aspiration, even a sense of consecration. As I'm doing this, I offer my body to the divine to make it a fit vehicle for his beauty and harmony. You do it like that, and that would be your spiritualization of the training program, gymnastic training program, and the body consciousness. You have a smell. Your aura has its own perfume.
Yeah.
You're looking not only social responsibility, but also responsibility to nature and to planet and the universe and the divine. But if you look at this whole business of carbon footprint from a larger perspective, every animal is giving out whatever carbon dioxide, taking in whatever it is taking as nourishment, but also giving things which in the balance of nature, everything is useful, everything is used by someone else. The carbon dioxide you breathe out is nourishment for the trees, and the oxygen they breathe out is nourishment for you. In the balance of nature, nothing is wasted, nothing is bad. Everything is part of a free-flowing and growth of life. The problem has started because we began to interfere with that balance by cutting all the trees, because they're not useful, or because they get you money if you cut them up. That's when the problem has started. So for me, the carbon footprint is not an issue at all. It is the destruction of nature which is the issue, the imbalance we are creating in nature, with nature and with other human beings. Consider that we have enough food to feed the planet twice over, and yet people are going hungry. Why is that? Because in the whole machinery of our current economics, for me to grab and hold and allow it to be destroyed in my godown is more beneficial to me, but I'm not thinking of what's the benefit to society, or to species, or to planet. And if I thought of that, then I would just say, well, I take what I take and I give to those who need. And there's enough to feed everybody. So the whole problem is really not about carbon footprint, which is a symptom of the problem. The problem is in the way we are relating in terms of consciousness with others and with nature and with the universe. That's the way the correction is needed. So we often use this phrase very loosely, oh, that fellow has strange vibes. What is it we're sensing? We sense those strange vibes even at a distance. The guy walks into the room and you say, oh, where did this guy come from? Which planet did he come from? What's this stuff? Or the reverse, oh, this is such a nice person, I like him, I'd like to be in him. And it's at a distance. So there's something which is impacting you at a distance. We tend to look at ourselves through the physical side, and so our body ends here. But if you look from the inner side, the subtle side, then our gross body ends here, our subtle body has many more layers. There's a subtle physical layer which is about this much, and a still subtler, and a still subtler, and then there is a zone about this much, which is what we call our personal space. When we're sitting alone and someone walks in behind us, if he enters the personal space, it's as if we have been touched, and we feel like an invasion, an intrusion, right? That's the range of the conscious, more conscious part of the aura, but there's a still subtler part which extends much further, which can be sensed, or a part in you which is on the edge, which can enter in contact with the aura of another on that subtle level at a great distance, even in thought sometimes. Somebody speaks to you the name of someone, and if you're sensitive enough on those layers, with the name comes a certain vibration. And if you're sufficiently sensitive, you can already say, oh, this person is like that, because you felt his vibes. So in that most extreme part of the aura, there's even a breakdown of space-time. You can feel things at a distance. So let's not go too much into that, because that may confuse you, but in these layers which are more accessible, more in the immediate domain, as you approach a person, your aura is already touching the other person's aura. Entering your aura, it's like something of him has got inside you. Imagine if someone put a hand inside your mouth, what would it feel like? That's what's happening on a much subtler level where we are not mostly conscious. But the effect of that is registering on all these layers which are more conscious. And you say, oh, some weird feeling. Oh, such a nice guy. You've not even interacted, you know nothing about, but the vibes make you feel so good. And so this is the level where there's a contact in substance on the subtler level, substance of mind and life force. And even at this level of the denser, subtle physical aura, and also at that level you can catch infections. You interact with a person. Now this is not a microbial infection, but a psychological infection. He was depressed. I gave him a lot of goodwill. I come away and 2 hours later I find myself in a huge depression. Where did that come from? I don't realize. While I was busy trying to help the person, I got the infection from the other. The other person got my freshness, now he's free, the infection jumped into me. So or the reverse, you are depressed, you meet someone and you find the whole thing lifted and you're free. And so often those who live more in the spiritual consciousness and who are more aware there and are more full of positive energies there, they can influence you and change your states internally. They are conscious of your state and can shift it. You may not be conscious, you just come away, I feel so good when I interact with so and so. That's it. But there's actually an exchange, an interchange, a substance involved. So vibes are not just an abstraction, they're literally a substance, of subtler substance. The life energy in us also can similarly be developed and transformed. We took the body as the reference because eventually the highest consciousness has to be manifested all the way into the most material. And that's where the culmination of the transformation is. But well before that, the mind can be transformed and awakened, divinized. Even the life energies can be awakened and divinized. But again, there are all these degrees. You can mentalize the vital, you can bring the intuitive influence into the vital, or you can bring a higher spiritual influence into the vital. And all of these would be degrees, steps of its transformation. The vital is the energy, the flow of energy in us.
It's what actually moves.
Yes, and it's what drives everything, pushes everything, energizes everything. So without the vital energy, the body would be this lump of clay. It entering in the cells makes the cells living. It entering in the organs makes them work. It coordinating the organic functions makes for a balanced, integrated life function. Okay, so the same life force operates in the mind and energizes the mind substance. So it splits into two modes of functioning. The part of the vital engaged in the physical body is where you feel the instincts of food, of hunger, etc. The part of the vital engaged in the mind is what creates the strong pushes of emotions, emotional reactions. So, but finally it's one energy. And the purification of the energies would begin by teaching them to become quiet. Because right now they're the slave of their instinct, of their drive, of their old habits. You make them quiet and then consciously bring in a positive movement. Feel love towards others. Widen your consciousness in your energies. Widen and feel the connection with the universe. And bring into that higher aspiration, higher vibrations, things which you would associate with the divine influence. And you build new rhythms, new habits. So somebody comes and is nasty to you, if your vital is already free of the habit of reaction, you'll say, oh poor fellow, and put a burst of love towards a person. But if it is not being transformed in this way, you get the nasty, you get a reaction, I'm angry, I'm upset, and a clash. So it's a process of culturing, the way you would culture your thoughts, you culture your emotions, and eventually the body. So we have to stop now. There was a request for the meditation, we will do that later in the evening perhaps. So we'll end with this.